Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Highest to Lowest, the new Spike Lee joint starring Denzel Washington. It is the 5th time that they have collaborated together, but the first time in 19 years. What this movie is about: Denzel Washington plays a music mogul with the best ears in the business. He is responsible for the careers of so many Grammy Award-winning artists, but times are a-changing. It's 2025. The music industry is vastly different, where he is so old school based in, okay, we need to get artists who really create this great music and we build up their careers and I take them from nothing into something great. But now you have the world of streaming, you have the world of social media, and he is trying to adapt to that. He is also in a position in his life where his business is kind of failing, and there's a rival record company down the street that wants to acquire his business. And he is in the middle of trying to figure out where he wants to go next in his life. Does he want to take a step back from this life that has made him who he is, this king of New York City, continue to go on that journey to discover more artists and continue his legacy? Or does he want to take a step back and focus on his wife and his kid, who is an aspiring basketball player? What does he want to do? That is where we find our character. The stage was set, and I was all ready for a new Spike Lee joint. I think he is a true visionary, somebody who has done movies that are so uniquely him and Denzel Washington. It's like peanut butter and jelly. This is going to be great. Very opening scene. You see Denzel Washington at the top of his penthouse overlooking New York City. Looks fantastic. There is an absence of music in this moment. You just hear him having a conversation on the cell phone, and you're like, I'm about to get it from every angle here. I'm going to get great direction. Excellent cinematography. New York City, Denzel Washington, this crime thriller that's supposed to be fantastic, because what happens to his character? His kid gets kidnapped while he's going through all these business decisions, and suddenly he has a whole other dilemma on his hands. How is he going to get his kid back? And is he going to put up everything that he has worked for in order to do that? So you hear all these elements. You think, okay, how could you make this movie uninteresting? This movie is called Highest to Lowest. I had high expectations going in, and I left with a low result. And it started just happening little by little. Spike Lee has a very unique perspective on film, always incorporating music and these elements that, for the viewer, take you into this almost fantasy land, I want to say, or moments that don't really exist in reality, in order to bring a message home. And the unique thing about Highest to Lowest is it had an original score all the way throughout. You just hear this really beautiful orchestra music. At the most intense moments, there is underneath it this very beautiful soundtrack. And in the beginning, I thought it fit well when everything was going right and his world seemed a little bit more bright and sunny. You had this beautiful score underneath that made it feel a little bit like a 90s or early 2000s, almost family drama. And I was just waiting for that to shift a little bit. I think the entire time in this movie, I was just waiting for crap to hit the fan and a switch to turn and things to feel a little bit more intense. And maybe it's my personal taste of, when I see a story like this on paper, I want it to have a little bit more of a sense of realism. Because there were things happening throughout this story that should have been intense to anybody else and in any other situation. And I start to feel this a little bit in my brain of, maybe I'm so used to everything being so dark in movies and television shows, where when somebody gets kidnapped, I want emotions to be high. I want people to be freaking out. Whenever Denzel Washington's character first gets the call that his son has been kidnapped, he is so cool, calm, and collected that I'm like, your son has just been kidnapped, and you reacted like somebody said your Uber Eats order has been canceled. I think us as humans probably would have shown more emotion if our Uber Eats order was canceled than Denzel Washington did in that moment. I truly think that Spike Lee had his vision come to life. But underneath all of these intense moments and all of these twists and turns, which there are not even that many twists and turns that this story takes you on, there's just this music that doesn't fit the situation. And if you ever wanted an example of the power of music in a film, this is a great example. Because you have these things happening that should feel so much more intense, but it never comes across that way because of that music that makes you feel cheerful at times. It's like if you got a call from your vet and said, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. We have to put your pet down. But underneath, you had this very like bright, shiny music. You're like, oh, I'm really sad in this moment, but this music that you're playing just kind of makes me want to move to the beat. And it almost felt like they were acting out a play where nobody felt like they were really based in reality. The law enforcement in this movie was probably the most frustrating because none of them seemed to have a clear or sound mind. They were terrible at their jobs. And it was really, really frustrating to watch people just obliterate an investigation. People being angry for no reason. Because this is actually a remake of a Japanese movie. Because I think in the original, it's like a national shoes executive. Here you have this music mogul. And suddenly you take that story, you place him into New York City. And it's really about somebody struggling with their identity, struggling with a sense of responsibility, doing what is right, but also doing what is right for you. You have a father figure who is trying to do right by his son, show him a great example, but also be an authoritarian. But in doing that, I feel Denzel created probably one of the most unlikable characters that he has ever portrayed on screen. And that is saying a lot because I never really felt like there were any true intentions to his character. Nobody learned anything in this movie. And it was overall just really frustrating to watch every single performance. And Denzel Washington is somebody who is great at improvising. One of his famous movie lines of all time, King Kong ain't got crap on me from Training Day, was improvised. So he also improvised a lot of the dialogue in this movie, and it just wasn't it. Almost cringeworthy at times, which is wild to say for Denzel Washington at a time in his career where he says, I got maybe 3 movies left in me and then I'm retiring. I can't believe he's going out on such a low note, like highest to lowest. And maybe you saw the clip of him talking about how he doesn't watch movies anymore. I'm not entirely sure that he still reads the scripts before going to film some of these movies, because between this and the little things that came out earlier this decade, he has been kind of a misstep so far. I think a true test of if you have a good story is, could you take this story elements, place it into another setting, and would it still be interesting? When it comes to this one, New York City is such a big staple in this film. They almost overshow all of the elements of the New York setting that if you took this story and placed it into somewhere in Delaware or Wyoming, it would suddenly become so less interesting because so much of it is surrounded in the fact that it's New York City, it's cool. But the story itself is not substantial enough to carry an almost 2-hour and 20-minute film that if you took out the elements of New York City, you would just have this boring story where I would say maybe 3 big scenes happen throughout the entire film and everything else just feels like filler and exposition. And by the end of it, it falls off so hard. You're like, what exactly were we doing here? What was the intention of this story? And out of everybody's performance, Jeffrey Wright was the only one who understood the assignment. He is the only character I felt any sort of connection to, so much so that I think the movie would have been much stronger if it would have focused on his character, because I felt like there was so much more mystery to him. There was so much more intent behind his actions. I think he's also just a fantastic actor. Going back to movies like The Hunger Games or American Fiction, or of course him in The Batman, I think he has fantastic range. I think if you completely shifted the story from Denzel Washington's character to Jeffrey Wright's character, it would be a much more interesting film. Overall, the message of this movie just really felt like it was talking down to me. It felt like an older person talking down to the younger generation, saying, get off your phones, you need to go out and create real art. Everything you're doing isn't going to be relevant in another 10 years. You have to focus on things with humans. Stop using AI. Stop basing so much on social media, which I think to an extent, there is some truth to that. We do get overindulged in how much time we spend online and how much worth we put into having followers, having streams, having people watch your YouTube channel. But I think overall, this movie thought it was being a little bit more smart about that subject than it actually was. It ended up just not saying anything about it. It was trying to be a commentary on the music industry and the value of art. But I think the story was just drawn out, too many things thrown in there that nothing really resonated with me. For highest to lowest, I give it 2.5 out of 5 headphones.